Jax's Revenge Domain. The email arrived at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line, immediate contract termination, effective today. I was sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee, checking the overnight production reports like I had every morning for the past 4 years. Everything running smooth, all green lights across 12 manufacturing facilities. Then I opened that message. Daniel, following comprehensive operational review, we are terminating your consulting agreement effective immediately. Transition meeting scheduled for 10 a.m. today. Bring all system documentation. Brandon Cole, CEO. That was it. No explanation. No transition period. Just done. My name is Daniel Marsh. I'm 57 years old, and for the last 22 years, I've been building industrial automation systems that keep manufacturing plants running. Started at Boeing, learned my trade the hard way during the good years, then came 2008. Massive layoffs. Learned an even harder lesson about corporate loyalty that day. After Boeing, I went independent. Built my first custom system in 2011 for a parts manufacturer down in Toledo. Word spreads fast in this business when you actually solve problems instead of just writing reports about them. The kind of reputation that gets you calls when production lines are failing and the consultants with fancy PowerPoints have already struck out. I took another sip of coffee and stared at that termination email. 4 years. 4 years of perfect system performance. 0 downtime. 0 quality failures. 0 safety violations. And now some MBA decides I'm expendable with 3 hours notice. Here's what Brandon Cole didn't know. What his entire cost-cutting strategy had completely missed. The automation system running their manufacturing network wasn't company software sitting on their servers. It was my system. Built by me, owned by me, licensed to them for operational use only. And in about 3 hours, I was going to walk into that termination meeting and watch him learn the difference between using something and owning it. Let me back up and show you how we got here. Cole Industries called me 4 years ago. Frank Morrison was their COO back then. Good man. Came up through the ranks, spent real time on shop floors before they put him in an office. He called me on a Tuesday morning, voice tight with the kind of stress that comes from watching everything fall apart. Daniel, we just failed our 3rd quality audit in 6 months. State regulators are making noise about pulling our manufacturing permits. I need someone who understands how this stuff actually works. I drove out to their main facility the next day. Chaos everywhere. 6 different software systems that couldn't talk to each other, production lines running at different speeds with no coordination, quality control data that bore no resemblance to what was actually coming off the lines, operators making manual adjustments while computers displayed completely wrong parameters. Every shift change costs us 2 hours just trying to figure out what's actually happening, Frank told me as we walked through the plant. Line supervisors use one system, quality uses another. Inventory tracking is basically spreadsheets and prayer. Took me 18 months to build them a real system, not some off-the-shelf package that sort of works if you bend your entire operation around it. Custom integration protocols that learned the specific timing patterns of their equipment, quality sensors that actually communicated with production controls, inventory tracking that monitored every component in real time. The results were immediate. 0 quality failures, no production bottlenecks. Equipment running at optimal efficiency with predictive maintenance that prevented problems before they happened. State auditors came through twice after implementation and found nothing to write up. Frank understood what he was paying for. The contract was crystal clear because I'd learned this lesson before. They licensed operational access to my system. I retained complete ownership of all source code, algorithms, and the physical control infrastructure. Frank signed without hesitation because he knew the difference between renting and buying. For 4 years, everything was perfect. Monthly payments on time, system performance flawless. Frank would call occasionally with questions about expanding capacity or integrating new equipment, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Then Frank retired. 3 weeks later, Brandon Cole showed up with his Kellogg MBA and a mandate to optimize operational expenses. His first email wasn't a hello or introduction, just corporate speak about vendor expense analysis and reducing external dependencies. Same monthly payment I'd been receiving for 4 years, same scope of work, same perfect performance metrics. But Brandon saw a line item on a budget sheet and figured there was money to be saved. I replied professionally, attached our contract and 4 years of performance data. His response came back in 90 minutes. Need full documentation for internal evaluation of operational systems. Operational systems. That phrase told me everything about Brandon Cole. He thought industrial automation was something you could understand from executive summaries and dashboard screenshots. 4 days later came the email that confirmed my suspicions. Subject line: System Architecture Documentation Request. Brandon wanted a complete copy of my system for internal assessment and transition planning. He wasn't interested in reviewing our service agreement. He wanted to eliminate my monthly payment by taking my work. I sent back one line: Happy to provide all materials included under your current license agreement. Then I walked out to my garage workshop and sat down at the control panel I'd built specifically for Coal Industries' system. Custom hardware with dedicated circuits for every major subsystem across their 12 facilities. Production coordination, quality integration, inventory synchronization, equipment monitoring. All flowing through boards I'd assembled and programmed myself. Brandon had no idea that panel existed. He thought my system was software running on company computers. He was about to get an expensive education in the difference between a user interface and actual infrastructure control. 3 days after my response, another email arrived. Intellectual property clarification required. Brandon wanted written confirmation that all automation software belonged to Coal Industries. I screenshot the relevant contract section and sent it back. Bold text, impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remains the exclusive property of Daniel Marsh, licensed for operational use only. His reply came 6 hours later. Transitioning to internal management effective immediately. Final payment processed per contract terms. But Brandon wasn't done. 2 days later, certified mail from their legal department. Cease and desist, violation of non-disclosure agreements, threats of litigation for unauthorized retention of proprietary systems. I sat at this same kitchen table reading that letter, then walked to my filing cabinet. Inside was something I'd hoped never to use. A printed email from Brandon's first week as CEO sent to the entire leadership team. Reviewed existing vendor contracts today. Note: Marsh Automation Ownership Clause. We'll work around this during transition. Brandon had known about my ownership rights from day one. Now his lawyers were claiming I'd violated agreements when their own CEO had acknowledged those rights in writing. I scanned that email, attached it to a response, and sent it back with one line: Please review internal communications before proceeding. Radio silence for 48 hours, then this morning's termination email. I finished my coffee and checked the time. 8:47 a.m. Meeting in 73 minutes. Time to go teach Brandon Cole the most expensive lesson of his career. I walked into that conference room at exactly 10 a.m. Brandon was already there, sitting at the head of the polished table like he owned the world. Mid-30s, sharp suit, the kind of confident posture that comes from never having built anything with your own hands. Behind him sat Carol Bennett from HR, clutching her tablet like a shield. Daniel, thanks for coming, Brandon said without looking up from his portfolio, still flipping through spreadsheets with that red pen, circling line items like personal offenses. This won't take long. I sat down, hands folded, and waited. We've made the decision to bring systems management in-house, he continued. More efficient, better cost control. Transition will be immediate. Carol shifted uncomfortably in her chair. She'd been with the company 12 years. Probably knew this was going to go badly. Brandon finally looked up, eyebrow raised slightly like I was wasting his valuable time by still being in the room. Before you go, we'll need complete handover of the automation system, access credentials, source code, documentation, everything by end of business today. The room went quiet, just the hum of the HVAC system and Carol's nervous breathing. I smiled, not a friendly smile, the kind you give someone when you know something they don't. I'm afraid I cannot. Brandon's pen stopped mid-circle. Excuse me? The system isn't yours to own. His confident mask slipped just a fraction. Confusion flickered across his face before the corporate authority returned. We paid for development. That makes it company property. You paid for operational access. The distinction is outlined in Section 8 of your service agreement. Carol was typing furiously now, probably looking up contract details on her tablet. Brandon waved her off, eyes locked on mine. This is absurd, he said. You can't hold company infrastructure hostage. I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm clarifying what you legally control, which as of 3 minutes ago is absolutely nothing. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. That's when I saw it. The moment Brandon Cole realized he'd made a mistake. Not the full scope of it, not yet, but enough to understand this wasn't going to be the smooth, cost-cutting victory he'd planned. "We'll expect full documentation by close of business," he said curtly, trying to regain control. I didn't respond, just sat there looking at him while he fumbled for his portfolio, clearly wanting to end this meeting before I could complicate things further. "That'll be all," he said. I stood up, nodded politely to Carol, and walked out. The drive home took 15 minutes, long enough for what just happened to sink in. Brandon Cole had just fired me and demanded I hand over 4 years of custom engineering work. Work he'd never purchased. Work he had no legal right to access. I pulled into my garage and sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. Then I walked over to the workbench, where my control panel lived. It doesn't look like much from the outside. Gray metal cabinet about the size of a large refrigerator. But inside that box was the nerve center of Cole Industries' entire manufacturing operation. Custom circuit boards I'd designed and built myself. Dedicated communication lines running to 12 facilities across 3 states. Real-time monitoring of 47 production lines, quality control systems, inventory tracking, equipment diagnostics. Brandon thought he was looking at software on company computers. He had no idea the actual control infrastructure was sitting in my garage, running off hardware he'd never seen. I opened my laptop and pulled up the main dashboard. All green, production humming along perfectly, raw materials flowing smoothly through automated systems, quality checkpoints functioning flawlessly. Everything Brandon was about to lose running exactly as I'd designed it. Then I started building his education package. Took me 6 hours to create exactly what Brandon expected to receive. Professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical language. User interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. System flowcharts with logical operations mapped out in detail, all of it completely useless without access to the underlying control hardware. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. Looked official, looked complete, looked like everything you'd need to run an industrial automation system. I attached it to an email with a single line: system interface documentation provided per contract termination. Back-end infrastructure access not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Cole Industries' corporate email system. Then I walked back to my control panel, placed my hand on the master power relay, and waited. The education was about to begin. Wednesday morning. I drove to Murphy's Diner like any other day, corner. Booth, black coffee, wheat toast. The owner, Mike, had been serving me the same order for 3 years. Nodded when I walked in, poured the coffee without asking. I opened my laptop and brought up the operations dashboard. Every indicator still glowing green. Brandon's IT team had probably spent all night trying to figure out how to operate the documentation package I'd sent them. Probably frustrated that nothing seemed to actually control anything. At 8:47 a.m., I made my decision. I toggled the master relay switch. The dashboard froze instantly. Every green light went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Production coordination stopped mid-cycle. 47 manufacturing lines across 3 states just lost their central nervous system. I took a sip of coffee and watched 4 years of perfect automation die in complete silence. The system didn't crash, didn't throw alarms. I'd designed it to disconnect gracefully. No warning messages, no error codes, no dramatic failures, just clean separation from all operational control. For the first 10 minutes, nothing looked wrong to casual observation. Dashboard screens at the plants still showed the last cached data. Line operators looking at their displays would see normal production parameters. Equipment already running would continue following their final instructions. But no new data was flowing anywhere. No coordination between lines, no quality feedback loops, no inventory updates, no equipment diagnostics. At 8:58 a.m., I pulled up the security cameras I'd integrated into the monitoring system. Line 3 at their main facility was still stamping parts while the quality sensors registered nothing. No automatic rejection protocols. No statistical process control. Just mechanical repetition producing components that might or might not meet specifications. At 9:12 a.m., 2 different facilities began processing the same batch number. According to their local displays, both had valid assignments for lot number 4471. The conflict, prevention algorithms weren't running. My phone started buzzing at 9:23 a.m. Cole Industries area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then a third. The panic was starting. By 9:45 a.m., the ripple effects were becoming visible. Raw material feeders delivering wrong specifications to production lines. Quality checkpoints showing everything passing while actual measurements varied wildly. Automated inventory systems losing track of components as they moved through disconnected processes. At 9:51 a.m., the first confused email arrived from Scott Anderson, their senior operations supervisor. "Hey, Daniel, seeing some weird lag on quality updates. Systems showing everything normal, but floor reports don't match. Can you take a look when you get a chance?" Scott was good people. Former Marine, understood how complex systems actually worked. He'd figure out the scope of the problem eventually. But right now, he was just seeing symptoms. I ordered another cup of coffee and waited. By 10:15 a.m., the emails were arriving every few minutes. Production data not refreshing. Quality sensors offline at Plant 7. Multiple lines showing same batch assignments. Still polite. Still assuming this was some kind of technical glitch that could be fixed with a phone call. I pulled up my impact calculator, a little program I'd built to estimate the cost of system failures. Conservative numbers. $38,000 per hour in lost efficiency across 12 facilities. Raw material waste as automated systems continued processing without feedback loops. Quality failures accumulating. Delivery schedules falling behind. Real number was probably higher once you factored in the panic spreading through their operations teams. At 10:33 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it showed Scott Anderson's direct number. I answered. "Daniel, thank God. We've got a situation here." His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the stress underneath. "Something's wrong with the automation system." Dashboard. Shows everything normal, but nothing's actually coordinating. Lines are running independent of each other. Quality data isn't updating. It's like the whole network just stopped talking. "Sounds like a significant system failure," I said calmly. "Can you remote in and take a look? This is getting bad fast." Plant 4 just had a near miss with their industrial mixer because the safety interlocks aren't communicating properly. Safety interlocks. That got my attention. I'd designed those systems with multiple redundancies, but if operators started overriding automated safety protocols manually, people could get hurt. "Scott, I can't help you. My contract was terminated yesterday morning." Silence on the other end. "What do you mean terminated? Brandon Cole fired me. Said they were bringing systems management in-house. That's... Daniel, this system is your system. We don't have anyone here who even understands how it works. I provided all documentation per my contract obligations." Another pause. The documentation doesn't actually control anything. It's just interfaces and flowcharts. That's what Brandon requested. I could practically hear Scott's brain working through the implications. "Daniel, we need your help. This isn't about contracts or corporate politics. We've got 847 people working in these facilities. If the safety systems aren't coordinating properly, I understand your concerns. Unfortunately, I'm no longer authorized to access Cole Industries systems." "Then who do I call?" "I'd suggest speaking with Brandon Cole or Ryan Phillips in IT." Scott hung up without saying goodbye, probably rushing to find someone in management who could fix this mess. At 10:48 a.m., my phone started ringing continuously. Different numbers, all from Cole Industries. I let them all go to voicemail. Then came the text messages from Scott. "Emergency situation developing. Please call ASAP." I deleted the messages and ordered a third cup of coffee. By 11:30 a.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. I was monitoring the cascade failure through my system's diagnostic feeds, the parts that were still reporting anyway. Production chaos at 8 facilities. Quality control completely offline at 4 locations. Raw material waste approaching $67,000 as automated processes continued running without coordination. The really expensive part was just beginning. When quality systems fail in manufacturing, you don't just lose the current production run. You potentially have to scrap everything produced since the last verified checkpoint. Depending on what they were making, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in finished goods. At 11:42 a.m., an email arrived with red priority flags from Ryan Phillips, their IT director. "Urgent. Critical system failure across all facilities. Multiple operational conflicts. No response from automation controls. Safety protocols compromised. This is affecting compliance status and customer contracts. Need immediate assistance. Please respond immediately. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand this wasn't a minor technical issue that could be resolved by rebooting servers or calling tech support. I opened a new document and started typing. Emergency System Restoration Services, Daniel Marsh Consulting. Rate, 2.5 times standard monthly fee for immediate restoration during business hours. Payment, wire transfer required before system reactivation. Duration, 96-hour emergency service window. Terms, full acknowledgement of existing service agreement and intellectual property ownership. I attached it to a reply email addressed to Brandon Cole, Ryan Phillips, and Scott Anderson. Subject line, Emergency Restoration Services available. Then I sat back and waited for someone in Cole Industries management to do the math on how much this shutdown was costing them per hour. At 12:23 p.m., the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call, 12:45 p.m. Eastern. Immediate response required. All caps. The panic was complete now. I joined the call at 12:43 p.m. Professional appearance, sitting in my home office with my engineering certificates visible on the wall behind me. The screen filled with stressed executives in various stages of crisis management. Gary Williams, some kind of senior VP, joined first. Sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the expression of a man who'd spent the last 2 hours in emergency meetings trying to understand how a routine vendor termination had turned into a company-threatening disaster. Legal counsel appeared next. 2 attorneys, one taking notes frantically, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Scott Anderson joined, looking exhausted. He'd probably been running between facilities trying to coordinate manual workarounds for automated systems. Brandon Cole was already on the call when I connected, positioned in a small window at the bottom of the screen, muted microphone, body language that suggested he'd been removed from active leadership of his own crisis. "Daniel, appreciate you joining on short notice," Gary began, voice tight with controlled stress. "We're dealing with what appears to be a significant operational disruption. Our entire manufacturing network is essentially paralyzed, and we need to understand our options for immediate restoration." I nodded once. "Your service agreement was terminated yesterday morning. If you want operational access restored, the terms are outlined in my emergency proposal." One of the attorneys leaned into her camera. "Daniel, we've reviewed your proposal. The financial terms seem disproportionate given the circumstances. Can we discuss modifications?" "Emergency response pricing," I replied. "Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours." Scott Anderson couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Daniel, we've got 12 plants completely offline. Production backing up across 3 states. Quality violations accumulating by the hour. OSHA's already asking questions about the safety protocol failures." He glanced at something off screen. 6 major customers have called threatening contract termination if we don't restore normal operations by tomorrow morning. Gary tried a different approach. "Look, we understand there may have been some miscommunication during the transition process. Can we focus on solutions here? What would it take to get systems restored immediately? Wire transfer for the full emergency fee, payment confirmed before I reactivate anything." Brandon finally unmuted his microphone. "This is extortion, Daniel. You're holding our entire operation hostage over a contract dispute." I looked directly into the camera, kept my voice calm and professional. "You terminated my services and demanded handover of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what your contract entitled you to receive. Nothing more, nothing less. We need 15 minutes to discuss internally," Gary said. They clicked into a breakout room, leaving me alone on the call. I checked my email. The emergency proposal had been forwarded to half their organization by now. Finance department, legal team, operations, risk management, probably even their insurance carrier. Everyone trying to calculate whether paying my fee was cheaper than keeping the shutdown going. It wasn't even close. 18 minutes later, they returned to the main call. Gary's expression had shifted from desperation to resignation, the kind of look you get when you realize you're holding a losing hand and the only choice is how much you're willing to lose. "Legal is initiating the wire transfer now," he said. "Should complete within 45 minutes. Let me know when it hits my account." The call went quiet. Nobody wanted to admit what had just happened. A routine cost-cutting measure had turned into the most expensive 4 hours in Cole Industries' recent history. All because Brandon Cole hadn't bothered to read a contract before trying to break it. I closed the laptop and walked out to Murphy's Diner's parking lot, needed some air while I waited for the payment to clear. The autumn weather was crisp, leaves turning colors, normal world continuing while Coal Industries learned about the cost of arrogance. My phone buzzed 31 minutes later. Banking app notification, wire transfer received, amount correct, no complications. I walked back inside, reopened my laptop, and called Gary Williams. Payment confirmed, I said. I'll restore your systems now. How long will this take? 45 minutes, maybe less. I drove home fast but safely. No point getting pulled over when I was this close to finishing the lesson. Inside my garage, I sat down at the master control panel and began the restoration sequence. It wasn't just flipping a switch. 4 hours of disconnected operations had created data inconsistencies that needed to be resolved. Production lines at different stages, quality checkpoints with missing data, inventory tracking that had lost synchronization. I had to manually verify each subsystem before bringing it back online. But I'd planned for this, built diagnostic routines specifically for recovery scenarios. The system came back to life gradually, each facility reconnecting as I verified its operational status. 28 minutes after I started, every indicator on my control panel glowed green again. 47 production lines across 12 facilities, all coordinated, all synchronized, all running exactly as designed. I called Gary Williams back. Systems restored. Full operational status confirmed. Thank you, Daniel. We appreciate the rapid response. I didn't do this rapidly. I did this according to the terms you agreed to. I hung up without waiting for a response. For the next week, I monitored everything from my kitchen table. Production numbers were actually better than before the shutdown. Turns out 4 hours of chaos had highlighted some inefficiencies I was able to correct during the restoration. Quality metrics perfect. Safety protocols functioning flawlessly. No customer complaints. And complete radio silence from Coal Industries management. On the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after Brandon's termination email, a new message arrived. Different sender this time, Jennifer Parker, VP of Strategic Operations. Someone they'd brought in specifically to handle the aftermath without having Brandon's name anywhere near the correspondence. The subject line was professional, strategic partnership opportunity, Coal Industries. The offer inside was substantial. 3-year exclusive contract with compensation 40% higher than my previous rate, explicit acknowledgement of intellectual property ownership, ironclad protections against future transition planning attempts, priority consideration for expansion projects. Most importantly, a clause I'd never seen before. Coal Industries acknowledges that Daniel Marsh's automation systems are proprietary technology, licensed for operational use only. Any attempt to reverse engineer, duplicate, or claim ownership of said systems will result in immediate contract termination and financial penalties equal to 24 months of service fees. Brandon Cole had taught them to be very specific about ownership rights. I read through the contract twice, then spent an hour drafting my response, new terms, even stricter protections, and a provision that any future management changes would require 90 days written notice before affecting our agreement. 2 weeks later, the signed contract arrived via overnight courier, every clause exactly as I'd written it. No modifications, no corporate wordsmithing, no attempts to negotiate. Jennifer Parker's signature at the bottom, notarized and dated. Brandon Cole's name was nowhere on the document. I never did find out exactly what happened to him. Word gets around in manufacturing circles, though. Stories about the MBA who tried to steal a custom automation system and ended up costing his company 6 figures in one morning. That kind of reputation follows you. 6 months later, I heard he'd taken a position with some startup in California, probably telling investors about his experience optimizing operational efficiency in industrial settings. Good luck to whoever believed that story. As for me, the phone started ringing within a month. Companies in Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, all asking variations of the same question. Are you available for systems development projects? They'd heard about Coal Industries, heard what happened when someone tried to take infrastructure from the person who built it. That story was worth more than any marketing campaign I could have purchased. I raised my rates 35% across the board. Every new client signed contracts with ownership clauses that would make their lawyers nervous if they actually tried to read them. Nobody complained about the terms. They all knew what happened to the last guy who thought he could get my work for free. 3 years later, I'm running automation systems for 47 manufacturing facilities across 8 states. Monthly revenue higher than my old Boeing salary ever was. 2 junior engineers working with me now. Good people I'm training to build systems the right way, with proper contracts and clear boundaries. Frank Morrison sends me a Christmas card every year. Retired to Florida, spends his time fishing and probably laughing about the Brandon Cole situation. His card last December had a handwritten note. Heard you're doing well. Always knew you'd land on your feet. Some folks learn the hard way that experience beats arrogance every time. He was right about that. If you're listening to this and you've ever built something valuable, learn from my story. Protect what you create before someone tries to take it. Read every contract, understand every clause, know the difference between licensing access and surrendering ownership. And when someone with an MBA and no real-world experience tries to tell you how your own work should be managed, just smile and remember Brandon Cole. Sometimes the best education is the most expensive one. The system's still running perfectly, by the way. 4 years since the shutdown, 0 failures, 0 safety violations. Turns out when you build something right the first time and maintain proper control over it, it just keeps working. Funny how that works.